Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy. On our hazardous weather graphic, we've got high wind warnings out starting tonight and continuing into tomorrow, through tomorrow, Monday here. Prince William Sound, mostly western Prince William Sound, Cordova area, Turnagain Arm, and that's out again later tonight and continuing out through the day tomorrow. High wind warning also out for the Alaska Range up here for tomorrow, as winds expected to gust as high as 70 miles per hour. And then farther to the north, in the interior here, these are winter storm warnings, which are out for moisture coming northward there. First front ahead of another one, expected to bring 6 to 12 inches of snow out through tomorrow night, possibly into Tuesday here, back to the northwest. Winter weather advisories here for the Galena area down in toward McGrath. And the high wind warning continues here for the St. Lawrence Island area and the Bering Strait coast for gusts 60 to 70 miles per hour out of the north, probably for the next day and a half. And then winter weather advisories are out along the Arctic coast. It's about the entire stretch of the coastline there, due to gusty winds and snow blowing and drifting snow. Not nearly as bad as the warning areas or St. Lawrence Island in that warning zone there. Moving on to the satellite imagery, we had moisture kind of dissipating here, but areas of snow with that, especially back through here in the colder air from the western Arctic coast southward across the Seward Peninsula here, and then down into the Bering Sea, bringing some snow and colder temperatures into the Pribilof Islands, and actually trying to push down into the eastern Aleutians, still above freezing through these areas. And then a break here in the interior from the Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, back down across the Kuskokwim Valley and south central Alaska earlier today, but you can see quite vividly the next system here, pretty fierce storm rolling northwestward right into the right up toward Kodiak Island, actually, and lots of moisture with that. The higher cloud shield here now onto the coast during the early afternoon hours, pushing into the Panhandle, and the main rain and precipitation and wind still back to the south there, but that'll be coming up Sunday evening, definitely for Kodiak and the North Gulf Coast areas. Out to the west, we're looking at, again, northerly flow continuing to pull cold air down into the northern and central Bering Sea, holding this frontal boundary back to the west and southwest, mostly affecting the Shimia areas to the central Aleutians. That's going to be really kind of retreating back to the west a little bit, or south, actually to the south. As you can see, the clouds now taking a more southwesterly direction. And on the chart today, pretty good gradient here. Again, high wind warning out for the St. Lawrence Island area, Bering Strait coast, with snow to go along with it. Nothing too terribly heavy, though. Mostly the cold air coming out over the open water. That same pattern on down to the Pribilofs, but not quite as extreme as up there toward Savunga and Gamble on into Tin City. And those areas becoming more showery here. Mixture of precipitation today there for the central Aleutians on out toward Shimia with that retreating front. And then this trough bright areas of light snow across the Kuskokwim Valley down into the Togiak Bay, Bethel area, Kuskokwim Delta, Yukon Delta, back to the northeast there. Drier conditions back to the north and northwest, just some flurries. Again, areas of light snow, gusty winds high as 30, maybe 35 miles an hour in places along the Arctic coast. And then rain showing up now along the southeast coast, will be coming northward later this afternoon for the North Gulf Coast on down to Kodiak Island. Big increase in the winds coming up with, you can see a tight pressure field with this system. 967 millibar low southeast of Kodiak Island. Tonight rolls right up across the island there, so definitely storm force winds here for the North Gulf Coast. back down toward the Barren Island areas. Front with the low center pulling back to the northwest, the front pushing eastward is going to weaken, so it won't be quite as strong. Still hold together enough to bring some good shot of rain into the coastal areas, heavier up toward the north, especially around Yakutat back to Cordova, and winds on the increase here. Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, along the North Gulf Coast, of course Cordova, as well as just about all of south central Alaska, and as well as the Alaska Range, again with those high wind warnings out for later tonight. This kind of a front develops out ahead of that and brings snow, and that's what's going to result in the winter storm warnings out over the interior areas. This zone stays put out here with the northerly winds and the cold temperatures, with the high wind warning continuing St. Lawrence Island, and less wind but still kind of snowy with the winter weather advisories on the Arctic coast. And that cold air continues to plunge southward here across the Pribilofs with snow showers all the way down to Adak. Could see some snow here for the Unalaska area. And on the Bristol Bay side of the Alaska Peninsula and Aleutian Range. Otherwise, wind, rain tonight, beginning to diminish there for Kodiak late tonight. But tomorrow, next system rolling northward. That'll begin to increase the wind and rain late in the afternoon once again as this next one comes up, 971 millibars. The original one weakens considerably here and moves over the southwest interior, just southeast of Unalakleet, actually by tomorrow afternoon, rising to 986 millibars. Look for snow with that, but winds will be much lighter, but staying quite gusty out here to the west with that cold air coming southward right toward the Aleutians again. And this front, the original front here, just washes out right along the southeast coast there with rain or rain and snow, depending on your elevation up in across southern Alaska. Snow persisting along the Alaska Range, mostly on the southern side and the eastern slopes there of the western Alaska Range. So Kuskokwim Valley kind of in between, and the Kuskokwim Mountains back. You'll be back in the snow, cutting off again along the coast. Not bad here over the interior tomorrow afternoon. Tanana Valley as this main batch of snow pulls up to the northwest there. But definitely snow for the Brooks Range, North Slope, and Arctic coastal areas with those gusty winds. Picking up, could see gusts 45, 50 miles an hour there for Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, and pretty strong as well for Kivalina, and again southward through the Bering Strait. Moving on to Tuesday, another system here coming onto the picture. The second one here pulls back into the southwest interior, much like the first one does, and weakens even more. Stay breezy here, southern Alaska, and damp along the coast. Showers or light rain at times for Kodiak, mixture precipitation inland. Nice north of the Alaska Range, Tanana Valley up to the Brooks Range. Snow, central western Arctic coast. Warm front spreading more rain, kind of the western edge there of that here into the Panhandle. Quite a massive amount of moisture coming up with this system here. Again, pulling northwestward. Next system out there over the western Aleutians. Lows for tonight, either a little above on the east side above zero to a little below on the west side. Otherwise, single numbers of teens to mid-20s in the windy areas of the Tanana Valley. 30s here for southern Alaska, and the Panhandle looking mild once again. Lows in the mid-40s there down toward Sitka, Port Alexander, and 30s for the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. Upper 20s, Pribilofs near 20 for St. Lawrence Island. Highs tomorrow. Shaping up like this, lower teens for the Arctic coast, right around 10, but up to 15 over toward Kaktovik. Mid-20s, upper Yukon Valley to lower 30s here as you pull down toward roughly the McGrath-Nikolai area. Falling back into the 20s out toward the southwest coast. Near 40, King Salmon, otherwise 30s to near 40 for the Alaska Peninsula. Mid to upper 40s for the Panhandle, a little cooler in the north, and 30s out over the Aleutians. And the lows coming up for Tuesday morning. Kind of a little bit milder up here now, staying above zero for the Arctic coast and North Slope on the plus side of zero, and mid-20s, very mild here in the Tanana Valley to mid-30s here south central Alaska, and 30s out to Bristol Bay, the Alaska Peninsula, and upper 20s to near 30 for the Aleutians, and mid-20s for the Pribilofs, southeast coast, upper 30s to lower 40s. High temperatures coming up for Tuesday afternoon. Another day in the 40s, some cases pushing 50 again in some locations there. Otherwise, 20s Copper River Basin, around 10 degrees for the North Slope and Arctic coast, but 30s you can see all the way northward there into the Kobuk Valley with 31 Kotzebue, 35 at Ambler, and then near 40 down along the Alaska Range.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving into aviation weather here with showing the IFR up across the Arctic coast, North Slope down to the Brooks Range and through the Bering Strait here to St. Lawrence Island. Lots of marginal out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. If the IFR up here into Bristol Bay and then out and then backing around back into Kuskokwim Bay up toward Bethel, but marginal for the Yukon Delta. And a band of IFR here through the central interiors with VFR on each side, and a lot of VFR here from the coast inland and across the Coast Range, turning an arm eastward there to the Wrangell Mountains and over the northern panhandle, becoming VFR down to the south. For the afternoon, tomorrow afternoon, area of IFR along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range up to about Windy Pass. Also IFR continuing, not quite as massive as it was here up along the North Gulf Coast, Kenai Peninsula area. Still some IFR over the northern panhandle, and mostly marginal down to the south with the Aleutians, not too bad. Marginal VFR actually cutting off here right around Adak and Atka, going VFR out and then back into the marginal stuff for Shimia. And then for the Tuesday morning outlook here, VFR breaking out along the Brooks Range and part of the North Slope, but the IFR hanging tough there along the Arctic coast through the Bering Strait to just about St. Lawrence Island, barely touching it there. So a little improvement up in that area. Marginal VFR for the remainder of the Bering Sea, with VFR kind of increasing there over the central Aleutians, and some lingering IFR here along the Aleutian Range, Alaska Peninsula, east side of Kodiak Island, Prince William Sound down to about Kane's Head there, and the diminishing area of IFR in the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, marginal around the remainder of the mountains, and then IFR a little more extensive now over the southeast coast with marginal down to Dixon Entrance. For Tuesday afternoon, IFR improves a little bit there, but you're still left over with a lot of marginal stuff. The next batch of IFR spreading up toward the coast, diminishing IFR for the Prince William Sound area, marginal VFR, most areas south of the Alaska Range in the Copper River Basin, IFR out here along the southwest coast up to looks like Nome across Norton Sound there, and IFR for the Arctic coast and North Slope with marginal out over the Bering Sea. Taking a look at the passes here for Adigan, or Anatuvik and Adigan, both VFR tomorrow, and for Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR, eastern approach, marginal otherwise, and for Rainy, same pattern, IFR in the eastern entrance there, otherwise marginal VFR. Windy, south side IFR, through the pass marginal, north entrance VFR. Isabel, occasionally marginal, and for Mentasta, VFR could be a chance of some marginal VFR in the southern entrance. And for Tanita, a chance of marginal VFR here on the eastern entrance, otherwise VFR. And for Portage, IFR on the east side, otherwise marginal. Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels, gradient here still across the southeast coast. We have one branch of the jet streaming northward there with the colder air back to the west here. 2,000 feet across the Gulf of Alaska into southern Cook Inlet there. Otherwise at the surface or below just about everywhere else out in the Bering Sea. Surface here just north of the Pribilofs late tonight, early tomorrow morning. And then for icing, swath here from the Chukchi Sea in the western Arctic coast North Slope extending southward through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, all the way down to the eastern Aleutians there across the Pribilofs, but about 3,000 feet or so of light to very isolated, moderate, possible mixed as well, and then a branch of that extending into the western interior. And here along the Alaska Range, some icing possibilities. More extensive though, Kodiak Island, actually one system lifting north, another one coming up, so that'll increase it again here, all along the North Gulf Coast and along the Panhandle. Jet stream, deep trough here, Bering Sea, southward into the Pacific, south to north flow here, one system coming northward there, still to the south, and then we have that 50-80 knot southerly jet with the main jet well to the south, 9,000 feet, 40 to 50 knots out of the south here, coming up into the actually Cook Inlet, south central Alaska, diminishing and then picking up again with the next disturbance. Northerlies 25 to 40 out over the Aleutians, and the Panhandle pretty strong here, 40 to 60 knots, as high as 70 there over the southern southeast coast. 45 knots at 3,000 feet there, otherwise 20 to 30 for the North Gulf Coast, 65 in across the Alaska Range, 40 to 50 out to the west. Turbulence Widespread moderate chop. Actually, could be even some areas of severe here over the mountainous terrain for small aircraft over much of the interior, all the way down the southeast coast, but less in the Aleutians.
Another area where the Federal Aviation Administration is using technology in advancing aviation safety is in the use of remote weather cameras as a tool to aid pilots in making safe flight decisions. Hello, I'm Sheila Balistreri.
So in '99, we really started what we currently call the Alaska Weather Camera Program. We say Alaska because it's the only place in the FAA that has this. One, it's available through the internet so that the pilots, their family, their friends, they can all take a look at what the weather's like before you go there. In addition, we have all of that available within all of our flight service stations so that each flight service station technician can call up and look at weather real time. And with that, provide a better briefing, whether it's pre-flight or in-flight, for the pilots. By far the most popular thing we've ever done.
The weather camera system has been a good one. I'm sure you can tell from the, if you had access to the number of hits that they get that, on each site, that they're well used, and they save a lot of gasoline, they save a lot of time for passengers out turning around in weather and coming back when a pilot can just look at the camera and make a decision based on that rather than going out and actually looking at the weather.
When we look at the cameras, and if it's a definite no-go situation, then we're not able, we don't send an airplane out to take a look at it and then have to just spend the gas and the time and energy to go out, take a look at it, and just turn around and come back.
By placing weather cameras throughout the state, we've certainly come a long way. Today, we have 55 cameras throughout the state, an investment of $7 million. 12 new sites are scheduled to be up and running by this October. This concept, I think, is stunning in its simplicity. The pilot goes online and can view 2 images for each location. The first shows what the site would look like in a perfectly clear day situation. The second shows current weather conditions. Pilots can now learn what the visibility is in the mountain pass they face and whether they want to fly through it before they take off. In many instances, they may decide not to fly, to hold on that flight for a while, depending upon what they see. And that's long before they set foot in the aircraft.
Alaska is a huge state, and the area covered so far by weather cams is comparatively small. In order for the project to be completed, 165 already identified sites need to be added. In what may be considered counterintuitive, many of these weather cameras are not placed at airports, but are positioned in or near mountain passes and other geographical areas, which are often used by pilots as navigational aids. Others are located at rural airports where there are no weather observers or co-located with automated weather systems. Pilots report that the value in these weather cameras is the real-time information they receive about destination and route conditions. Flight service specialists also have access to the weather camera images and routinely brief pilots with the most up-to-date information before takeoff and during their flight.
We use the weather cams in 2 basic ways here at the flight service station. For self-briefing, to get ready to be able to brief the pilots, to look at the weather cam where we have an airport with a weather report. We can compare what we see on the screen with what the weather report says. Where we do not have weather reports available, then we can look at the camera and again get a picture of what the weather is like at those locations.
When I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is pull up the weather cameras to all the destinations in the southeast and check that against the actual reports at that station, and it gives you a lot better picture of what the weather's doing than what we used to enjoy with just the observation. I'm sure all the pilots are doing the same thing. I know all of our pilots do. A well-placed camera looking in 3 different directions, there's nothing like that. Be able to see in real time what your weather actually looks like before you take off.
Cost benefit is quite a bit. As far as saving us money, we don't launch a flight when we know that the weather's good bad, when we can see it on the cameras that the weather is bad at our destination.
When the weather cam system was first proposed, there were some people who doubted its utility, and as they've come online, we've seen how the pilots really like to be able to see those pictures. They value it, and as they become available to us as briefers, we value it too.
I do thank you also for the cameras. I personally have used the cameras. I think that probably the one that's most used is the one over going through the pass into Lake Clark, and from time to time I get calls that it may not be functioning properly, which I'm pleased to say that Mr. Poe responds to very quickly.
During a recent independent study of Alaska pilots who have used the system, 68% reported making decisions to cancel or delay flights based on weather camera information. Pilots also reported that these decisions help them avoid additional fuel costs from flights that must be diverted or repeated due to bad weather. Now, these safety and economic advantages generated more than 2.3 million hits this past year on the FAA's Alaska WeatherCam website.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the sea ice analysis. Analyzed today, Sunday. Norton Sound, of course, pretty well iced over and expanding westward here all along the coast down into Kuskokwim Bay, and also up here north of the strait. And this area really kind of building westward there, but you can do the easterly winds, you can't really see it's under Wainwright. It's kind of opening up there, pushing away from the coastline due to the east winds they've been having up there on the areas west of Barrow. And for the marine forecast, south winds 20 tomorrow for the south coast, but seas up to 17 feet. Small craft advisories due to the winds on the north coast there, south to southeast 25 with seas near 20 feet. Lynn Canal, southeast 25, gusts 40, southeast 25, Stevens Passage and Clarence Strait. Outlook for Tuesday, south winds 30 knots here for much of the coastline, turning southeast on the north coast at 30. Seas coming down though, 13 to 15 feet. Southeast 25, 6-foot seas there in Clarence Strait. 15 to 20 knot winds becoming lightest there for northern Lynn Canal. And for Prince William Sound, southeast winds 40 knots tomorrow, seas 10 feet. South 40 here for the North Gulf Coast on the east side. 45 knots, just under storm force warnings there for tomorrow here for the western North Gulf Coast of the Barren Islands. Kachemak Bay, south 40. Southern Cook Inlet, southeast 40 knots, 16-foot seas. And southeast 30 knots, 11-foot seas north of the Forelands. Outlook for Tuesday, those come down, turn northeast, back down to 20 knots, 5-foot seas. And small craft advisories hang on to the areas of southern Cook Inlet. Gales hang on to Kachemak Bay and the Barren Islands, down to minimum gales, seas up to 18 feet though. And also minimum gales here for the North Gulf Coast. Out of the east and southeast 30 still, but lighter winds what you'll see on Monday there for Prince William Sound. And for Kodiak Island, south winds right across the island there in the marine areas, 30 to 35 knots, with seas up to 23 feet there on the east side of the island. And south 30 knots, turn northeast 25 from Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev. On the Bering Sea side, much lighter, north 15, southeast 20 for Bristol Bay. And then for Kodiak on Tuesday, gales here on the east side of the island, and southeast 25 coming for Shelikof Straits. The small craft advisories all along the Alaska Peninsula here, both sides, northwest 25 to 30 now, taking hold over the main peninsula, especially out to the west. East 25 for Bristol Bay with 4-foot seas. And the Fox Islands tomorrow, north winds 25 to 35 knots with seas 13 to 20 feet. And then 30 to 35 knot winds, kind of galish here, especially on the Bering Sea side of the central Aleutians, with small craft advisories back to the west. Those seas hanging around 20 feet all the way to the central Aleutians here, actually even over toward Nikolsky. And then for Tuesday, north or east, increasing to 40 knots way out west there, but a break here, northeast 20. And then small craft advisories north to northwest, 25 to 30 there for Adak and Atka. Northwest 30, pretty uniform across the Fox Islands, seas 12 to 18 feet. And for the southwest coast tomorrow, north 25 to 30 knots, strongest north of Nunivak Island, seas 7 as high as 13 feet, 17 feet in the forecast with north 40, St. Lawrence Island. And that blows right down across the northern Bering Sea to the Pribilofs, falling back a little bit to 35 knots with those seas still up to 17 feet. And then for Tuesday, northeast 25 out of Kuskokwim Bay, northwest 30, Pribilofs up to St. Matthew Island, turning north 30 there for the Bering Strait coast. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east winds 30 knots tomorrow, brisk wind advisories there, northeast 30 for the central coast, increasing the gale force here from about Point Ley to 40 knots from Cape Beaufort all the way down to the Bering Strait, turning more northerly. And then for Tuesday, here starting the Bering Strait, coming down 30 knots, east 25 to 30 now from the Wales area all the way up to the western coast, east 25, central coast coming down to 20 knots on the east side. For tonight again, big storm rolling up into Kodiak Island, strong winds, high wind warning out Cordova and Prince William Sound, Turnagain Arm areas, gusts possibly as high as 85 miles an hour. And then snow on the increase here through the interior. There's a first batch coming in, winter storm warnings out there. And a weakening front pushes into the northern panhandle for rain and a little bit of increase in winds. High wind warnings continue St. Lawrence Island, the Bering Strait coast. For tonight, winter weather advisories out for the Arctic coast. And for tomorrow, no change out here in the west with those north winds and areas of snow. This low moves in and weakens. Next one rolling up moves to about the same position on the next day with more rain into the panhandle.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.